Welcome to Through the Hurricane. I'm Kathleen Kane, the first woman elected Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Have you ever looked down and seen the pieces of your life on the floor and wondered what happened? You haven't just been through a storm, you've been through a hurricane. Sometimes we think that we'll never have joy, we'll never have love again, we'll never have a normal life again. But Through the Hurricane will teach you that the power of love and resistance and the human mind can do anything. We all experience a hurricane, but the human spirit is indestructible. This is Through the Hurricane. Let's walk through the storm together.
Welcome to Through the Hurricane. I'm your host, Kathleen Kane. Back by popular demand is my very well-known co-host, Alexandra Lexi Golfer. I wanted Lex to come back today for a number of reasons, because I always love doing an episode with her. It's such a nice back and forth that we have. She offers such a different dynamic from my generation to her generation. But we've been talking about a lot of hurricanes over the last episodes. My hurricanes, the hurricanes of parents who have lost their children, an NFL star who had struggles during his career and afterwards. We've had Matt Cartwright tell us about the struggles through history that we've all had to keep things in perspective. And today I wanted Lexi to tell you a little bit about her recent hurricane that she's had, because I think it's something that a lot of us have experienced, but sometimes we're not so sure that we should call it a hurricane, but I think that we should. Welcome back, Lex.
Thank you. I would definitely call it a hurricane if you ask me. And I actually have tissues with me, but I know I'm going to be crying, so I have my emergency roll of toilet paper with me right now. But I'm going to try to get through it without crying.
We are classy women.
Yeah. It's one way of putting it, for sure.
So tell us what happened. Tell us about your best friend.
So my best friend, he was named Nash. He was a dog. This was years and years ago, 7 years ago, actually. I wanted to get a dog, and it was important that I rescued a dog. So I signed up for emails that showed me rescue dogs that became available in the area. And I remember exactly where and when it was that I saw him. It was at Kelsey's holiday party, those ragers that she used to have. And I needed a little bit of a break, so I went into her TV room. I'm checking my email. It had to have been midnight or later. And I saw his little face pop up on the screen. And the picture of him, it was Nash with a little red scarf around him. And as soon as I saw his face, I was like, that's my dog. I'm going to get this dog. And I looked at so many dogs, but as soon as I saw him, I'm like, that's it. So the process, as you may or may not know, to rescue a dog it's lengthy. They do not just give them away, and rightfully so. A lot of these dogs have had troubled past, and they need to make sure that the new owners know what they're getting into. So I went through all of the interviews. They have to do a site inspection of your house. And I went to go pick up Nash. It was a 5-hour drive to get him and 5 hours back. And he was delightful. I mean, just the happiest little thing on earth. Our first night together, he jumped into bed with me like he knew me forever. And he was laying on me. And I just thought to myself, I'm the luckiest person ever. The next morning, I had to leave for a meeting at work, and I was only gone an hour. And I came back to the house, so excited to see him, and my house was completely destroyed, specifically my kitchen. I did not know this about Nash, but he loves food and trash probably more than anything besides me. He was a counter surfer. So when I first walked into my kitchen, I thought that someone had either robbed me or a raccoon came in, because Nash had gotten on the counters, ate everything in sight, and then decided to tackle the garbage can and eat that too. I was
really making himself at home, wasn't he?
Oh, absolutely. And I come home and he didn't have an ounce of guilt. He was looking at me smiling like, where have you been? Like, I made myself lunch while you were out, but I'm happy you're home now. And that was Nash. Nash was one spunky little dog. He was actually so bad when I first got him that I thought I was going to have to give him up. I mean, it was so upsetting. He just, every time I left him, he would destroy something, whether he was ripping up the carpet, counter surfing again. I even got him one of those fabric crates and he chewed through the crate. And then he went to the bathroom all over it. And it was only
Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Can you guys hear our dog barking like crazy?
No.
Can you hear that or no?
No.
Okay, good. All right. Sorry about that. Go on. So let's see. I want you to describe Nash's appearance for us and I'm always saying this because there's such a push for designer dogs and the most beautiful looking dogs and the most, not outrageous, but I want to say exotic looking dogs. Tell us what Nash looked like.
So Nash, first of all, was exotic, but more along the lines of the Tiger King Joe Exotic, if you remember him at all.
Sure.
And he was beautiful. Okay, he was stunning.
He was.
But I don't think he's a dog that other people thought I was going to get. As you know, our family dog, Huey, is a designer dog. Huey costs more than some people's rent. I mean, Huey is just fabulous in his own right, but he's a snob. He really is. Nash had maybe 3 teeth. Maybe. His coloring was all over the place. His tongue was always sticking out because he only had a few teeth. And he had these crimped ears. And because he liked to sleep so much, he always had this insane bed head. I mean, he just looked like a ragamuffin all the time.
At all times, yeah.
Like, he had a tough life before I got him, and he just looked spent. But he was...
Did you know anything about his life? Did you know anything about where he came from?
I did. So he was in Atlanta. That's where I got him from. He was abused very badly, hence only having a couple of teeth. And... I mean, I'll get into this part later, but I found out 2 weeks before he passed on a CAT scan that he was actually shot twice. And I mean, how anyone could do that to that sweet little thing, or any animal really, is beyond me. But to give you a little bit of a better picture of Nash, we were coming home for Christmas one year. And my mom likes to get Huey his holiday sweaters. Now, Huey wears this cable net turtleneck, which is the most ridiculous thing on earth when you think about a dog wearing a turtleneck. But
he looked like a professor.
He did. At Harvard, though, like not like a community college.
Completely.
Yeah. So my mom was, we're on the phone and she goes, oh, you guys are coming home for Christmas. I got Huey a cable knit sweater, perhaps a denim vest for Nash.
Oh man. Cut off?
Yeah. My mom.
Lex, you said that Nash had a severe detachment disorder from you, and that is true. Tell everyone to what degree that poor dog would try and get out of the house and go and find you when you left. Remember, he was staying in a second-story home once.
So there was many instances. Again, when Nash was with me, he was fantastic. But when I left, he would absolutely panic. So he would try to get out of the house before I did. He would do everything to completely bypass me. And then what he would do is he would run outside the house and lay underneath my car so I couldn't leave. So eventually what I had to do was I had to start putting him in my room before I would leave the actual house. And my mom called him Houdini because it doesn't matter what barrier you put up, Nash was going to get out. And I would go into work. I'd get calls to my job at night saying, Nash is out of the house. We have him over at our house from our neighbors. And it got to the point where no matter what I did, he was going to escape the house, but he wouldn't leave the house. What he would do was escape the house, but then lay in the driveway and wait for me to come home. And the neighbors eventually came to realize, okay, he's fine here. He's not going to do anything. When they were walking by him, he'd walk up to them, say hello, and then immediately turn around and go lay in the driveway. So I went on a little vacation to Florida, and I was having my family watch my dog, Nash. And I remember one night I'm scrolling through Facebook and I see a picture of Nash with a Hawaiian lei around him, and it said, "Missing dog. Can anyone help find us Nash?" I panicked because, I mean, I'm miles and miles and miles away. And I mean, my family was supposed to watch him. They said they had this. I'm not gone for long. And Nash had gone missing. And the way he got out was he jumped out of a second-story window. So he escaped 4 more times during the time I was in Florida. And I swear it was like 3 times in 1 week, the same picture of Nash with this Hawaiian lei around his neck posted on Facebook. "Have you seen this dog? Missing dog." And the picture that they used, first of all, I don't know how he got a Hawaiian lei around his neck. It looked like he was out partying the night before and just like wandered off of his friends, and now no one knows where he is. He would do anything. Another story was I was at the Knicks with my mom, which for those of you who don't know, it's a restaurant a few miles away from my house. We're sitting at the Knicks having dinner, and I get a call. And they said, "Are you Nash's owner?" It's like, "Yeah, I am. What's going on?" I knew I had him locked in my room at my dad's house. They said, "Well, he's in the Manning's parking lot. We have him. Why don't you come get him?" Now, for those who don't know, the Manning's parking lot is about a block away from the Knicks, which is, again, miles from my house. He had made it all the way to Manning's on his way to the Knicks. This dog was amazing. And I remember getting off the phone with my mom. I said, "Mom, you're not going to believe just what happened." She takes a sip of her margarita and she just goes, "That dog's incredible." So I swear if they had not picked him up in the parking lot, that he would have made it 100%. He would have made it to the Knicks to find me.
Oh, I have no doubt about that.
Mm-hmm.
You always said that, well, I don't want to, you could tell what you said, but I don't think I've ever seen a dog so in love with his owner as Nash was with you, and you with him. He was just always so intuitive. And when I say you two spent a lot of time together, you're a traveler. You're a wanderer. You're a traveler. You go everywhere. Your car is always packed and ready to roll. Zach, I'm saying my own son here. Nash, that's a typical mother. You can't get even the dogs' names right. But Nash was always in the car with you. Every long car trip, everywhere you went, Nash was always with you. And he wasn't a fussy dog. He'd just get in the car and go. And it was just amazing to me how close you two were.
I mean, I truly did take him everywhere with me. When his anxiety was really bad, I actually would put him in the car and keep my car running while I was working at night. So for about 5 hours, I would have him in the car, would sporadically go let him out to go to the bathroom. But he knew that if he was in the car with me, I was close. I was coming back to him. And it was just easier for him to be in the car with me than it was for him to be home alone. And he was my best friend. I mean, it was just me and him for so long. And I always said, as long as I have Nash and I have my car, I'm fine. I mean, the amount of times that things just went wrong or I wasn't feeling right and just needed to get away, I'd, pack a bag, toss Nash in the back seat, and like away we would go. And that's one of the main memories I have with him is he was down for anything. He, again, as you said, he was not fussy whatsoever. As long as he had me, he did not care. And he honestly was just such an amazing, amazing dog. And if for everyone listening, he did calm down. He eventually calmed down. He wasn't destroying the house anymore. He got a lot wiser as he got older. But yeah, he was just everything to me. He really was.
He settled in. I mean, that poor dog probably had so much angst in trusting anyone again. And, when he found you, I'm sure he was just so happy and so willing to just get in there and start his life all over again. And he probably knew that you would accept whatever he did because he had gone through, such abuse in his past home. But I mean, I just thought it was amazing. And I always said to you that song and you'll know the song, you sent it to me. It's about one eye and crooked teeth. I always say that reminds me of Nash. And it's honestly with such endearment because he was a humble dog. We've all had these designer dogs, or they know they're good looking. But this dog was just like, this is me, I'm here. Yep, my tongue is hanging out the side of my mouth. But I'm with Lexi and nothing else matters. And he was such a human being almost. I mean, you had gone through you haven't had an easy 10 years, right? Your 20s were not the greatest decade. I think yours is coming up, but your 20s weren't the greatest decade. And Nash was always there every minute, every night you couldn't sleep. Every time something went wrong, your best friend was always right there. You didn't have to call him. There he was.
Yeah, I think he stopped acting out pretty quickly. I think he kind of realized he's not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. And maybe I needed him a little bit more than he needed me. Me and him escaped a very dangerous situation. And I just remember having him in the back seat looking out the rearview mirror. And it's, my past is behind me, but Nash is still right there. Me and him moved to so many different places by ourselves, like just me and him. And again, like all I needed was him. We were so attached to each other. He would follow me everywhere. He was always with me. And one of the greatest memories was when I escaped that situation and I moved to a different city and it was just me and him. And it wasn't scary at all. Like to us, it was a new beginning and I knew he was fine. He was going to love it no matter where we went, as long as he was with me. And, I started a new career and all of my marketing was me and Nash. Nash would go to all the showings with me because I was in real estate. I met all these amazing friends and they loved Nash. He was present for so many chapters in my life and he got me through all of it.
Yeah. So how have the last couple weeks been? Toilet papers now. Anybody who's listening and not watching.
Yeah. Give me a second to collect myself.
It's okay. While you're doing that, I will say, when we first came up with talking about this segment, I at first was worried, we've talked about children dying and we've talked about careers ending and we talked about so many things. I was afraid people would say, well, wait a second, now you're talking about a dog? But I realized, when our dogs passed away, it is devastating. And I happened to be we're having our lot cleared because somebody that I know is getting married in a couple of months here at our home. So we're having the trees cleared. The tree guy called me and he said, can I just run something by you? And he said, last week we had to put our dog down. He goes, I don't know if you're a dog person or not, or if you understand it, but he goes, I'm devastated. I was crying and he went on to tell me about this dog dying. And I just said, Mark, I do understand. And I'm glad you're relaying this freely to me. We don't know each other that well because we're actually taping an episode for the podcast today about Lexi's dog, Nash. And I hope other people realize just how important dogs are to our lives. And there's so much science behind it that we'll get into in a little while, but it's just incredible to me that an animal means so much. And then when you say to dog lovers like you or like me or anybody else, your first thought when somebody says animal is, they're not an animal. That's a dog. That's Nash.
My child. Yeah.
That's Tiger. Yeah. It's like, don't ever call them an animal.
Oh, gosh. He wasn't, for those of you who knew Nash, he was me. We had such similar personalities. He was just always by my side. I was living in Greenville, South Carolina with Nash. And again, we had a great life. I had a great career, great friends. Nash loved where we lived. Everything was just great. And I met my now fiance, Andrew, and Andrew lived in Washington, D.C. And because of his job, he couldn't leave D.C. So we had the agreement that if things were going to work between us, I essentially would have to move to DC. And it wasn't the easiest decision because I loved where I lived so much. But at the same time, it was an easy decision because I loved Andrew and I wanted things to work. And I had moved to so many places by myself without knowing anyone that it wasn't scary to me. But I did actually think, like, is Nash going to be okay with this? Is he going to like the area? It's not as, green as Greenville is. So Nash was the basis of many decisions that I had made in the last 7 years. He truly, truly was. And again, if you'd look at him, you'd be like, you're letting that dog like run your life. But yes, I was. Okay, I absolutely was. So I made the move to DC about a year ago, and I have to be honest, like, it has just been not what I imagined whatsoever. I normally adapt so well to new places, and I'm not adapting. I don't have the same career or like the friends or anything. It just feels like things aren't clicking the way that they normally do. And again, I moved a lot of places by myself, and it was never an issue. So this last year has been really, really difficult, I think I feel like half the person like I used to be. Sorry. So, sorry.
It's okay. You're fine. And what you're talking about is hard. And it was only 3 weeks ago, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You could ask anybody years later and they'd still be crying about it. So we understand.
Yeah. So about a month ago, things with, just my mental health had gotten pretty bad. And I normally have a check on all these things. I'm a very level-headed person. And this last year, I've just been giving it my all to feel like myself again. And it's just not happening. So about a month ago, Andrew said to me, why don't we go back to Pennsylvania? And you love being around your family. Like, maybe it'll help ground you a little bit. You can start to feel like yourself. And I said, yeah, let's do it. I'm always down to go back home, always. So we're going back home, and Nash developed this cough a few days prior. And I wasn't worried about it. I really wasn't, because he had the cough years ago and it ended up being nothing. But I decided to make an appointment with his regular vet at the Sheltsville Animal Hospital, which they're just absolutely amazing. I know you go to them too. And they got me in immediately. And, she said Nash is having some serious heart and lung issues. And she was hopeful. But as soon as she told me, something in me just flipped. Like, I knew this was the beginning of the end. I had actually told Andrew about 2 months ago. I was just looking at Nash and he was looking at me. And I said to him, I think Nash is going to die soon. And Andrew said, like, why would you say that? He's perfectly healthy. Like, nothing's going on with him. I said, I know my dog. Like, I know he's going to die soon. Something's not right. And this was way before he showed any symptoms. So I went to that appointment alone, and they gave me the news, and I was just an absolute mess because I knew this was it. So they sent me home with the medicine. They said, stay in Pennsylvania. We'll check in on him next week to see how he's responding to the medicine. And I went home and I told Andrew what was going on, and I was kind of a disaster. And he was like, everything's going to be fine. He's going to be okay. Like, it's Nash, Nash has eaten like 5 bars of chocolate, like 50 hush puppies. Like, nothing's going to
jump out of windows.
He got shot twice. Like, he's fine. But I just knew. I knew. So we stayed in Pennsylvania. I just take him back to the vet, and he wasn't responding at all to the medicine. She said, okay, we're going to double the medicine. And something in her tone, and Dr. Abby's amazing. I could just tell that she was being a little bit more sympathetic than she was the week before, because I think she knew too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm giving him the new medicine. I'm being absolutely religious about it. And the following Monday, Nash just completely stops eating. And again, Nash was absolutely obsessed with food. He would do anything to get out a bag of trash. He would do anything to steal your meal. He was just relentless about it. He really was. So I immediately called the vet and I said, he's stopped eating. And she said, bring him in immediately. So I bring him in and she said, I think it's cancer. It's not getting any better. And we need to start exploring some options. She said, I would never want to push this decision on you, but I think you need to think about euthanasia. So I left the office just crying. And there was this woman in the hallway who saw me crying and just came up and gave me a hug and said, I know how hard it is. So I went back home and I called Andrew, and Andrew's still so hopeful about it. And he was like, he's going to be okay. Like, he's going to eat something. It's Nash. Maybe it's just an off day. He's going to eat something. But either way, I'm going to drive back to Scranton. Don't worry about it. I'm going to be there to help you. So since the initial appointment of when they told me something was wrong with his heart and lungs, again, I knew that it was the beginning of the end. And I spent every second with him. And he wasn't really able to do a whole lot, and it was killing me to see him like that. Nash was someone who, to be the person, but he followed me everywhere. I'd walk 5 feet, he's following me, and he just wasn't able to do that anymore. And I could just see his face when I would leave the room. He was just upset that he couldn't follow me the way he used to. And especially with the not eating. I mean, it was just so unlike him. And I just had this pit in my stomach. So Andrew gets into town and, he's starting to realize how bad it is. Nash would have these respiratory attacks where he wasn't able to breathe. And he was just gasping and gasping for air. And it was horrifying, to see him in that much pain. But, I would not leave his side. I just laid on the couch for hours and hours with him. And, the weird thing about grief is that it snaps you into reality like nothing other. I've always been someone who's been able to disassociate from things and, my mind always wanders. But grief makes you live in the moment because, your bitter reality is so awakening to you. And I feel like I was grieving him since the first time we went to the vet. So Andrew gets there and, he's seeing how bad it is, but Andrew's like a golden retriever himself. He's just, so happy and positive.
Yes.
He really, really is. Like, if you're having a bad day, call Andrew. Honest to God.
Right.
So Nash is just continuing to get worse, but Andrew is there to help me. And one Saturday morning, Andrew said to me, I think we can take him to a vet to get his lungs drained. I did some research and we could drain his lungs, and that's going to help with these respiratory attacks. Maybe it'll make it less frequent. And I was just kind of staring at him, and he said, I think we should go today. There's a vet an hour away that's open now. And I'm just kind of looking at him, and I nod because I knew if I took him to the vet that day, he wasn't coming back. But I couldn't tell Andrew that. So I said, okay, we'll go. And we're driving an hour away, and Andrew's playing. I'm sitting in the back with Nash. Obviously, he's laying down. I'm just holding him. And Andrew's playing Chapel Roan, Pink Pony Club, all of her greatest hits to try to cheer me up. And he just keeps saying, only 20 more minutes, only 10 more minutes, we're going to be there. And it killed me because I didn't have the heart to tell him that while he was trying to make time go faster to get to the vet, I was trying to slow it down because I knew he wasn't coming back. I knew what would happen when we got there. So while he's saying 5 more minutes, I'm thinking, my God, 5 more minutes with my dog. So when the 5-minute mark came up, I asked him to take off Pink Pony Club and put on Atlantic City by Bruce Springsteen. And I just held Nash. What was that?
Was that Nash's favorite song?
It wasn't, but I needed to hear it. And I just held Nash's little face and I said, I know you're going to come back to me, It's okay. I know you're going to come back. So Nash he seemed to know, he really, really did. He seemed to know that this was it. And he was just so calm and just looking up at me. And, I was saying everything I needed to say to him. And we get to the vet and Andrew's, excited almost to be there. And he's carrying Nash inside. And as soon as we get in the door, Nash has one of the breathing attacks. And they immediately take him into the back and sedate him. And they take us in and they just say, it's not looking good. We have him sedated back there and you guys really need to think about putting him down. And Andrew got upset and said, we want to get his lungs drained. We think that's going to help. Can you guys do that here? And the vet said, yeah, we can do it here, but it's a lot for the dog. It's painful for him. It's tiring. It's uncomfortable. And the fluid's just going to come back, maybe tomorrow, maybe in a week. And she said, you only have weeks left with him, whether you do this or not. And Andrew said, okay, well, we're going to do it. We're going to take him home today and we'll take a few days to think about it. And I said, no, we're not taking him home. And Andrew got more upset and, he's saying why? We can at least buy him more time. I said, Andrew, he has weeks to live. He is so uncomfortable and unhappy. We're not buying him more time. We're buying ourselves more time with him at the expense of him. And that's just not fair. There were so many reasons I had my mind made up. And one of them was Nash had a horrific life before I rescued him. It was filled with chaos and pain and hurt. And I would not let his final moments be like that. If we took him home and he had one of those breathing attacks again, and that's the way he died, I would never, ever forgive myself. I needed him to go peacefully. I needed him to know that he was safe. So, Andrew kind of argued with me again about it, saying let's just take him home and we'll figure it out. And I kind of snapped at him and said, we're not taking him home. I owe it to him to do this for him. I'm his mom. So we put him down, and even though I had such a reasonable decision, logic behind it, I was still an absolute mess. It doesn't make it any easier. And yeah, it's been a rough few weeks, I was already going through a not great time, and Nash represented so many things to me. And it's hard, you can say I'm I'm not always the best daughter or sister or friend or partner, but I was always the best mom to him. And being Nash's mom is genuinely, most days, the only thing I actually liked about myself. And now I don't know what to do, but yeah.
Well, let me say this. First of all, I don't know whether anyone has noticed all of a sudden the birds chirping in the background. To me, that's quite the sign. It's amazing. You just said, as you're saying, he's going to come back to you, these birds started chirping in the background. Yeah. It's not here. It's got to be at your house. So in DC. So let's say that. And, That's why I'm a mom. So I understand where you're coming from. I mean, at the point where you have to choose the person you loved over yourself, that's when really, your motherhood shone through.
Yeah.
And I know you're having a tough time, and I know this was probably the worst thing for this to happen, but I do believe that dogs wait until they know that their owners are going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
He knows you're going to be okay. Of course, he knows you're going to be sad. Who wouldn't be, But they do wait. We had a golden retriever. He was 18 years old, way past his prime.
Yeah.
Way past his prime. And the dog was, there were points in time where he would lay down and wouldn't get up for days, and we thought he was dying, and everyone would come to say goodbye to him. But it was at a really bad point in all of our lives, too. And I swear to God, that dog probably thought to himself, my God, I can't leave these sad, sad people right now. I can't do it to them.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to pull myself together because they can't handle it right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Tiger lived like another 2 years after that. And he was right. We did need those 2 years. By the time Tiger did finally pass away, he was 18 years old. We were at the shore. My mother was watching him, and he just went to sleep. And
tell the real story of how Gigi related to you.
I'm going to have to tell that story another time because it is a good story. But I really do. I was so grateful to Tiger for waiting until we could handle it. And I know that Nash knows your strength better than you know your strength. Just like you know Nash better than anyone else, he knows you better than anyone else. And he knew that, maybe you don't think you do, but you do. And you did, because you made that decision. That is a very hard decision to make. Mm-hmm. And because you're sad now doesn't mean that you did anything wrong, or doesn't mean your sadness, I think, should say to you just what everyone else has said to them. I can do this. I can do this on my own. He has showed me the way. He's always going to be with me. I have those great memories. Nash ate your mom. I almost started laughing when you were talking about Nash eating anything, because just a year ago, your mom cooked a giant whole chicken in her, what's that called? Her smoker.
She smoked for 8 hours.
That smoker.
Yeah.
8 hours. It was all we had to eat. The chicken comes out. It's sitting on the table. We're starving. And we go in, and Nash had eaten the entire chicken. We had to order pizza. But that was Nash. And nobody got mad at Nash. It was Nash. You want Nash to have that chicken. My point is that...
Yeah.
Yeah. That was...
back, and we heard the thump. And we went running inside, and that chicken was a goner.
He had eaten the entire chicken in about 40 seconds flat. And he was a great dog. But I want you to know, and I would never, and neither would your mother or your sisters or your partner, say that you're not the best, because you're the best. One of my best nieces. Mm-hmm. For whichever ones of them are watching, you are also my best niece. But I think you are showing your strength, and I want you to remember that, because sometimes grief reminds you of your strength, and sometimes maybe that's also the point, to remind you that you can do it alone, because eventually we all do, and this is your time that you're going to be getting married, you're starting a new life, and Nash wants you to know you can do it.
Yeah, I actually think that too. I think because these last few months I've been thinking, I'm not okay. He wanted to prove to me, like, you are going to be okay, and it's going to be all right.
That's right. So it is, I was telling you before this started, I was looking up, it fascinates me about the human nature, number one. But dogs are so human-like, and that's why, they're pets and they're domesticated, and probably the favorite pet of all time. Nobody ever says, oh, I had to put my cat down. All the dog lovers are like, oh my God, it's my dog. It was like my child, our pet family. But I was curious as to why that is. Why are they so much like people? What do they have? Why are they so loyal? Why are they so unconditionally loving? Why do they forget things so easily? I could yell at poor Ozzy for doing one of the 100 things that the poor puppy does wrong all day long. But then the next minute he'll just be like, I'll feel terrible about it. And he'll just be like, oh, hey, come and pet me. I'll come and sit by you. They forget things. So I was curious about what they have that we don't have, because we don't have that as humans. We think we're more evolved than they are, but I actually think they're more evolved than we are. And they were put here to show us the way to do it. And some of the things you said exactly were about Nash. Unconditional love. It didn't matter if he had to sit in a car. It didn't matter anything. He was going to stay by you. His loyalty, his unconditional love. They're very forgiving. They live in the present. So when you were saying about grief, how grief forces you to live in that present moment, that's exactly what dogs do.
Mm-hmm.
They force you to live in that moment because they don't look at the past. So the other thing I was looking at was, okay, well, why are humans so mean, right? If we have such this connection with dogs, what do they have that we don't have? Why are we mean and they aren't? And some of the things I found were actually pretty incredible. So it said that they have the ability to love and to forgive, and they have real empathy for other people. They want to be a part of a pack. They want to trust people, and they want to love people and their pack. So why aren't we like that? And some of the things that came up were like that dogs don't have the ability to hold grudges. They forget. They don't live in the past. They don't live in the future. They live in the present, and they don't hold grudges against people. And it said that our thinking, and by the way, my research was extremely scientific. It was AI Google. But I did weed past and got to the good ones. It said that we have a complex way of thinking that's a step, well, they say above, but I'm actually going to say below what a canine thinks. Like they forgive, they live in the present. We don't. We revert to the past. We hold these grudges. We have these resentments. They all build up to us. And then we start to, either lash out or we don't talk to people anymore. The whole ghosting phenomena is another thing you and I are going to talk about another time. And we revert to the past. We have malice and we have resentments. And that's what makes people even hate other people. Isn't that amazing? Dogs don't have that ability.
Yeah, I read once that the purpose of life is to learn how to love. And because dogs already know how to do that, that's why their lives are so much shorter than ours.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we probably, maybe we live longer so that we can eventually learn our lesson, know? Yeah. And maybe they were put here to teach us those lessons. And that's kind of what I'm telling you right now. And, I don't want you to, I don't want to say feel bad about it, because of course you're going to feel bad. Of course you're going to feel sad. But I don't want this to be what you think as a weakness, because it's not a weakness. It's actually a big strength that you just said yourself. And I hope that when you rehear this podcast, you hear it in your own voice, because he did teach you that. And hopefully they teach all of us. But I just thought it was a fascinating example of how dogs are actually better than we are at managing emotions. Oh, and that was the other thing. They can manage their emotions better. Isn't that funny?
That is
They manage their emotions better than humans. And they have that innate ability to sense what we're sensing, and that they kind of adapt towards us. So if somebody in the household is sad, Tiger used to go and sleep out in front of their doors. And that's how I would tell who in the family needed the help. Because sometimes our house was like, it's like a little refuge. Remember? People would come and stay just when they needed a little break.
Yep.
And you could always tell who needed it the most, because Tiger would be asleep outside of their door. And I would say, okay, well then tomorrow this one gets more attention.
I do remember I stayed with you for a few days, and Tiger slept with me those 3 days.
Yeah, they can definitely tell. But I think, living with a pet and a dog, and then losing a pet and a dog is kind of like one of those things to us that says, you better live in the present like a dog. You better let go of your past resentments and like a dog. You live like a dog. I bought Zach a t-shirt. Zach loves dogs. And I bought him a t-shirt that said, live like somebody left the gate open.
I love that. I heard that saying before. It's adorable. I mean, as you know, I've been struggling with this, of course, and I have good days and bad days. I feel like I'm handling it a lot better. My mom actually always said her worst fear was something happening to Nash and how I'd handle it. And I said, yeah, like you should be worried. Like it's not going to be great. So yesterday I went to the medium Joe that we have all gone to, and she's just fantastic. And I was telling her about Nash, and Nash actually came forward, and I think medium Joe was a little surprised that Nash was so vocal and so in your face. If you've ever been to a medium, the energy that comes forward, it's very similar to their personality on Earth. So if someone was very, very quiet on Earth, their energy is going to be very quiet coming forward. They might not have a lot to say, but Nash had a lot to say. And, you know, I have began looking for another dog, a rescue. I signed up for the emails again. And there was this dog that looked like Nash. And I was like, I think I need to get this dog. And then another dog came up that looked nothing like Nash, but he was blind in one eye. And I'm thinking, oh, that's right up my alley. So I was so torn. I'm going back and forth. And Medium Joe says to me yesterday, Nash says you're looking for another dog. I said, I am. And she said, get the brown one. He's saying, get the brown one that looks like him. Now, there is no way on earth she would have known any of that. And he said he's going to find you in that dog. So the race is on to get another dog because, I just need to feel him next to me again.
Yeah. Did going to Medium Joe help?
Absolutely. And, Gigi, my grandma, your mom, came forward and she had a ton to say, which was funny because the last time I went, it was all Pops and Gigi didn't have a whole lot. And this time Pops was very, very quiet. And he was doing most.
He lost the battle.
He did, yeah. She said, I have a lot to say and you're going to hear about it now.
That's good.
When you know that you're going to see them again and they are still with you, it really does just take the weight off of your shoulders. And she said, specifically with dogs, they're part of what is called a soul team. And that team is with you all of the time. So a piece of his soul is going to find me in the next dog, is what she said. And it's going to come through in the way that I need the most. And my next dog, if I really need someone who's very supportive, it's going to come through that way. If I need someone who's funny and light, it's going to come through that way. But I would highly recommend going to Medium Joe if you struggle at all with grief, when you're ready, because it really, really does help.
Yeah, I think a few of our guests have said that they needed to know, Joe Grahusky said he needed to know his son was okay. Mm-hmm. He was brought up Catholic and he was forced to believe but he didn't actually feel it. And at one point, Dale said she knew Brian was in a better place, but she wanted to feel him or see him. And that meant a lot to them to know that they're in a good place. And I'm glad that you got that from Nash. Let me ask you this. You do always say that rescuing a dog is better than buying a dog. Why do you believe that?
I just think rescuing a dog is better. Now, mind you, I did buy Ty for Andrew, so I'm a little bit of a hypocrite in this sense, but Andrew really wanted a golden puppy. I just think you have the unique and special opportunity to change a dog's world. Everyone loves a puppy. Most people take such great care of a puppy. They bond with them since they were little. But a rescue dog, a lot of times they're older. All they know is pain and chaos before, and you have the opportunity to change that around. I think the last 7 years that I had Nash, every single day I made it a point to make sure he forgot everything about his past. Taking care of him and loving him was the greatest joy and responsibility of my life. So I would highly, highly recommend rescuing a dog. You have this very special opportunity to change everything that they know and mold their future.
And you told us that you rescued Nash, but actually Nash rescued you.
Yeah, it's one of those cheesy sayings. You see the bumper stickers on the back of the cars. It's who rescued who, but they're not wrong.
They're not wrong. I know sometimes we hate to be cheeseballs like that, but a lot of the times, yes, it's right. It belongs on a t-shirt or a bumper sticker. Sometimes it does.
Sometimes. Sometimes.
And I saw that it's so funny because again this morning, I woke up, I go through my emails first, and PetSmart sent me an email about they're having an adoption event at their store. And I did not know that. I thought, what are they selling dogs or what's happening? So I click on, and they are adopting homeless dogs. And even just the word homeless dogs is heartbreaking. Well, homeless people, homeless dogs, things like that really get to me.
Yeah.
And I thought, what a wonderful thing to do, because dogs are used, they're there to help veterans with PTSD. They're support dogs for people with disabilities, either emotional or physical disabilities. They bring them to nursing homes because it eases the anxiety and the loneliness of people in nursing homes. And it's shown that just petting a dog can reduce your anxiety tremendously. It's amazing what a gift they are.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Nash saved my life countless times. I like to think I saved his too. There's just something so special about someone who loves you more than anything. I think having an unconditional, loving relationship is rare. You have it with your parents and your kids, but having someone there who just looks up to you and needs you the way that they do, it really is one of the greatest responsibilities of your life.
It really is. And I think, I talked about this before, and I mean this. Excuse me. You and I are going to have another session on the ghosting phenomenon, because a dog would never ghost you. It just wouldn't. And I want to have this conversation with you because I feel like your generation is the one who kind of started it, cultivated it, and now made it kind of like a thing. So one of these times you're going to have to come back and we'll talk about that. And I promise we will talk about the story about when my mother sort of told me the tiger had passed away.
Just tell the story now.
Okay, fine. We were at the shore. I was coming home. It was a Friday. I was coming home early. It was about 7 a.m. Only me and my nephew and his child were up. And I get a call from my mother. And she says, "Oh, you're not going to believe what just happened." And I said, "What?" And she said, "We lost Tiger." I said, "You lost Tiger? How'd you lose Tiger?" "Oh, I don't know. We just did." And I said, "Well, he doesn't move that fast. How did you move? How did you lose him? Did he just walk away? Which direction did he go in?" She goes, "I don't know. We just lost him, okay? We just lost him." And I said, and now I'm thinking, wait a second, this is an odd conversation. I said, "Wait, are you trying to tell me the tiger is dead?" And she says, "Maybe." I said, "What do you mean maybe?" She goes, "Well, okay, probably." I said, "Probably?" I said, "Mom, nobody's probably dead. They either are or they aren't. Which one is it?" She goes, "Well, I think so." I said, "Well, okay, is he breathing?" No. I said, "Okay, how long has he not been breathing for?" And she said, 45 minutes. I said, "Okay, I'm pretty sure he's dead then." She goes, "Probably."
And she was annoyed at you for asking all those questions. Like, I don't know, he's dead.
She was very annoyed at me. She was very annoyed. And I said, "Okay, Zach's going to be traveling by himself behind me. Please don't call him and tell him this. I'm worried about him on the Schuylkill because he'll be emotional about it." So she said, "Okay, so you want me to call Zach and tell him that the dog's dead?" I said, No. I said, forget we had this whole conversation. Don't do anything. She said, well, what should I do with them? I said, I'm going to send somebody over. So I get home 3 hours later and I go over and the poor dog is laying in the middle of the living room. And she said, I sent somebody to come and move him. She said, I know, but I didn't want him moved. And I said, okay. She goes, I tripped over him twice. I'm like, oh boy. Okay. Now, in her defense, she did have Alzheimer's at that point, or maybe it was right before we knew that, but she did. And it's a funny story, but it's a sad story. But that was our tiger who decided that he was going to wait until we can pull it together. So that's my story.
Yeah, and waited until you guys weren't there.
Exactly right. He didn't want to in front of us, but
it might have been the smoke.
So anyway, it was definitely the secondhand smoke. I never thought about that, but you're probably right.
Yeah, that might have been the culprit.
Right. Well, we love our pets. Thank you so much for coming on and telling us that story. I know how difficult it was for you and that you did want to do it. So I hope that it was a little bit of a help for you to get it out.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Sorry about all the crying.
Never apologize for that. Anyway, thank you again, Lexi. We'll see you soon. And everyone out there, thank you for joining us on another episode of Through the Hurricane. We'll see you soon.
Thanks for listening to Through the Hurricane. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. See you next time.